From Caracas, I'm Cody Weddle. In under a month now, Venezuelans will head to the polls to elect a new National Assembly. Now, the current president of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, he's called it the biggest challenge yet to face the Bolivarian revolution. The opposition here, the right-wing opposition, hopes to capitalize on what are record low oil prices to win what would be only their second electoral victory since the year 1999. Excuse me. And today I'm joined by Carlos Mogollon. He is the director of organization for the official party, and he will also be directing parts of the campaign here in Caracas for the United Socialist Party of Venezuela. Carlos, thanks so much for joining us as we await elections here. You know, elections in Venezuela, they always receive a lot of attention, not just in Venezuela, but really around the world. Some people have said Venezuela is the key to Latin America. Obviously, we know Venezuela has huge oil reserves, and if you could talk about that, are there any other reasons that Venezuela is seen as such an important country and elections are followed so closely?
Bueno, es obvio que un factor fundamental en la política exterior venezolana es el petróleo que posee.
Well, Venezuelan oil reserves are a fundamental factor in determining Venezuela's foreign policy. We have the largest reserve of oil worldwide and a significant amount of gas reserves. This according to recent studies. However, there are other factors that make Venezuela the center of attention in the region. We are located in a key geostrategic area with coal reserves, aluminum, and many other minerals, as well as biosphere reserves. We see that since 1998, Venezuela's elections have caught the attention of international actors. Why? Or better, why Venezuela's elections were not that relevant? And after the Bolivarian Revolution came, along with President Chavez, they are so relevant to the rest of the world. At the moment, Venezuela's elections are tantamount to a class struggle, a clash of two models. On the one hand, there are the revolutionary people, patriots, who differ Venezuela with equality and justice. And on the other hand, there are those who think individually. I would like to highlight the fact that Venezuela is known worldwide not only for its energy resources, but for what it represents. We are hope, a voice for the voiceless of the world. We attend several international fora annually. We support the Palestinian cause, and we were one of the few that were against the Afghanistan invasion after the 9/11 attacks. At the moment, Commander Hugo Chavez condemned the terrorist attacks in New York City, as we pointed out that terror must not be fought with terror, a statement that led Venezuela to become detached from the United States, and the eventual coup that took place in 2003 in Venezuela. Nonetheless, Venezuelan leaders continue to speak up against any atrocity. And Venezuela is the voice of the peoples of the South and the oppressed peoples. We were against the invasion of Libya. Now we see that after the invasion Libya was torn apart, Tripoli, its capital city, is governed by criminal gangs, a situation that triggered instability in the northern Africa. Venezuela calls for the non-intervention in domestic affairs and a different fashion of organization in the region and the world. Now there is the Union of South American Nations, the Community of Latin American and Caribbean States, the Summit of South American Arab countries, to ultimately build a multicentric and multipolar world, as it is laid out in the Homeland Plan. An alternative to hegemonic powers that want us to remain as periphery countries, just to supply raw material and cheap labor. It is obvious that we, as an alternative, are contrary to their interests, and therefore they will try to silence the Bolivarian revolution. In the United Nations, some dare to say, let them say whatever they want, for the ultimate decision will be made by the world powers. But it seems that Venezuela has said more than they wanted. Thus, they will try to bring the Bolivarian revolution to an end.
To what extent, speaking just here in Latin America, to what extent do the politics of Venezuela affect the rest of the region?
In the last decade, Venezuela became one of the most influential countries of the region, not only because of our oil, but the use of oil with a different policy. Now Venezuela plays a key role in the different Latin American institutions, the Alliance of Peoples of America and the Petro-Caribbean Group. The Caribbean people had been oppressed by imperial powers, but now they have an alternative, with a fair and affordable access to energy. There is also the Union of South American Countries, UNASUR, and the Common Market of the South. After the free trade area of the Americas was rejected and defeated in Argentina, when President Chavez and President Kirchner put forward a different trade accord, the Latin American region plays a fundamental role in the international arena, with Venezuela leading the integration process.
The president of your party and also the president of Venezuela, he said that these elections will be the biggest challenge yet for your movement, the Bolivarian Revolution, and for your party. To what extent do you agree with that, and why is that?
Bueno, totalmente de acuerdo con esa aseveración.
I totally agree with him. The current domestic and international attacks on Venezuela have been one of the most aggressive attacks on our nation. Of course, we'd face some hurdles. We, as a revolution, grew up in the midst of difficulties. Even 200 years ago, one of the most arduous struggles for independence was that of Venezuela. It took the lives of a large part of our population. Even so, we went beyond our borders to fight for the independence of 6 other nations, which is related with what you mentioned, the influence of Venezuela in the region. Of course, when we first took power, we decided to take a different path, to pursue a second independence, and to take back our sovereignty. This, thanks to the Bolivarian Revolution. But we've been subject to continuous attacks, among them coups, the oil industry went on a strike, which we call the oil sabotage, violent actions on the streets, there are paramilitary groups. And there is also the murdering of some of our leaders. The international conspiracy against Venezuela has escalated. You can see the different actions by the United States to lower oil prices, which has a direct impact on our economy, something that might hurt the U.S. itself. The exploitation of shale oil has allowed the United States to be the main oil producer. They ruled out the veto that prohibited oil export from the 70s. They have signed several accords with some countries so that oil prices remain low. It's not just the revenues we don't get because of low oil prices, but now we're facing a domestic issue, which is breaking up a rentier state on which we relied so much during 50 years. As we end with this rentier state, we face some constraints. Inflation rises, and there are some shortages, and so on. But the enemies of the homeland already know we are dealing with these issues. We have different modes of production and distribution, and they seize the opportunity to try to put an end to the Bolivarian Revolution, to win the parliamentary elections, to do the same the Chilean Congress did to President Salvador Allende in 1972. not to acknowledge ministers, not to pass budget. Therefore, it leads to a complex outlook. But we remain optimistic, and we will overcome these struggles as we have done for 60 years.
And you're talking about oil there. To what extent will that low price of oil affect the campaign, and how will that play into the campaign as we prepare to watch the campaign?
It affects us all. It affects the entire economy. However, we continue with our social policies. We might be the only country that, despite lower oil prices and global economic crisis, has not stopped infrastructure projects. We have not stopped social missions. In the last days, 110,000 new people entered the social security system. More than 1 million houses will be built by the end of this year. We are building a new electrical system and 4 new lines for our metro system. I think we can say that, at this stage, the fall of oil prices has not affected our campaign for the upcoming elections, because our campaign is not sustained by the oil prices. Even with oil prices falling to $0, we will still be able to carry on the Bolivarian revolution, continue our social programs, and develop our economy.
So you believe it's an economic war, as we've heard, ahead of the elections by powerful corporate influences to affect the vote?
It is obvious it is an economic war. It is mainly an economic war along with a psychological war involving the fear of the people and the mistakes of the Bolivarian revolution. It's a plot against Venezuela because, as I told you before, there are many who don't want the voice of Venezuela to be heard abroad. However, we call on the people to remain strong, as we have been since the revolution started. We are certain we are going to defeat them in the elections, as it happened before in 19 elections.
In your opinion, why should Venezuelans not trust the opposition?
Porque la dirigencia de la oposición venezolana.
The Venezuelan opposition leadership does not represent the interests of the Venezuelan people, the interest of Venezuela. The Venezuelan opposition leadership continues to be the same, with the same characteristics of the opposition before the Bolivarian Revolution. They tend to hand over our national resources in exchange of benefits by the United States and some financial institutions. Recently, we learned of an audio that leaked last month. We heard the Venezuelan opposition leadership talking with representatives of the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, giving away the country to sell cheap oil to foreign companies in exchange of benefits. We heard them saying that the social programs of the Bolivarian Revolution are unnecessary expenses. We saw what happened in Greece. And here they say that 110,000 new pensions are unnecessary. They consider housing for Venezuelans living in subhuman conditions to be unnecessary expenses. Access to free education for every Venezuelan child, as well as free computers called canaimitas. Well, they also consider them to be unnecessary expenses. Infrastructure projects to build more hospitals, healthcare units, access to free dental services and ophthalmological services. They consider all of that to be unnecessary. Therefore, the Venezuelan people and the Venezuelan opposition grassroots cannot trust the opposition leadership, because that leadership considers Venezuelans' rights as unnecessary expenses, unlike the Bolivarian Revolution, that considers the poor to be a priority of the country.
Let's talk a little bit about foreign policy, and what, in your opinions, what are the differences between, the biggest differences between your party and the opposition and other parties when it deals with foreign policy?
La política exterior de la revolución bolivariana, como lo decíamos, es una política de no intromisión en los asuntos internos de los pueblos.
The foreign policy of the Bolivarian Revolution is based on the principle of non-intervention in other countries' domestic issues. but it is also based on solidarity to promote a multicentric and multipolar world, but taking into account our sovereignty. We attend different international bodies to convey our message of peace and solidarity without being conditioned to the will of foreign powers, because we are not compelled to do as others command. Instead, we are compelled to act as the Venezuelan people command. Our foreign policy is guided by the principle of independence and solidarity. With the Venezuelan opposition holding talks with World Bank and IMF representatives, we can only see their sell-out policy. It's astonishing to see that as external actors attack our country, the Venezuelan opposition joins them in their endeavor. There is the Obama decree against Venezuela, a peaceful country that has never sent their troops abroad to wage foreign wars. They declared Venezuela to be an extraordinary threat to the United States, the main military power of the world. As a Venezuelan, it surprises me to hear Venezuelan opposition leaders in favor of the decree. Some former Latin American presidents attacked the Venezuelan democracy and our political system, all while the Venezuelan opposition remained silent. If the Venezuelan opposition has not been able to reach positions of power, it is because they have not created a platform that convinces the population, and because they are overly subordinated to foreign interests. A hypothetical government of the Venezuelan opposition will not continue with policies such as the ALBA Group, the Mercosur and CELAC groups, or the Summit of South American and Arab countries, and the war we've done with the BRIC Group. A Venezuela under the opposition leadership will not vote against the American blockade on Cuba. It might not support the Palestinian state, or it will not advocate for an end of foreign intervention on Syria.
Una moción de Venezuela por el cese de la intervención en Siria. Esas cosas serían impensables.
One controversy that has emerged between Venezuela and other countries and international organizations is surrounding international observation of the elections. We know UNISUR will be observing the elections. Other people have called for European observation and also the Organization of American States. We know the Secretary of the Organization of American States, Luis Almagro, he sent a very strong-worded letter to the government here in Venezuela. How do you see the situation of international observation and the controversy that has emerged?
Uno de los principales logros de la revolución bolivariana es la calidad, el sistema electoral de calidad que hoy en día tenemos. Uno de los principales sistemas electorales del mundo. Sin embargo, nosotros, como pueblo soberano, nos hemos negado a que nuestro sistema electoral sea usado para turismo electoral, para personas que vengan a hablar sin saber de lo que hablan, pero sobre todo que sea usado como herramienta política contra la revolución bolivariana. Llama la atención, por ejemplo, la preocupación del Departamento de Estado.
One of the biggest achievements of the Bolivarian Revolution is to have one of the safest electoral systems in the world. That's why we defend our electoral system and will not allow people to come and talk nonsense or to come and use our electoral system against the Bolivarian Revolution. For example, the U.S. State Department and some other spokespeople from the United States, even President Obama, called for international observation missions and for fair elections in Venezuela, as if they were not. However, we all know international observation missions are not allowed in Venezuela. Texas Attorney General warned that he would have European Union poll watchers arrested at the polls. The European Union issued a statement on the American electoral system for some irregularities. Then how can they ask for international observation missions if they don't even allow them in their own country? Well, those statements by American officials are part of an agenda they have in the region. The Colombian government also calls for international observation missions in Venezuela. They recently held elections in Colombia, but we, under our principle of non-intervention, did not question their electoral system or the results, even though they have one of the highest abstention rates. And for example, the mayor of Cúcuta is member of a paramilitary group. What is more, the European Union and the Carter Center issues tons of reports on Venezuelan elections and on more than 40 countries. However, you will not find a single report on the American elections, because for them, international observation missions are a political tool to attack us. Of course, we call on the international community to come and take part of this process, but with seriousness, and not with the objective of attacking the Bolivarian Revolution. Thus, the Venezuelan elections will be monitored by the UNASUR, CELAC, African Union, and Russian observation missions. We are not against international observation missions, but against this American strategy of using observation missions as a political tool. The Organization of American States is not the American Ministry of Colonies. It is a different organization. Now with this OAS, our countries meet with respect. Venezuela is part of the Organization of American States, and we abide by its charter, not the approach of Luis Leonardo Almagro, the current Secretary General, who attacks Venezuela for no reason. Why doesn't he talk about the more than 16 audit process our electoral system goes through? He doesn't talk about it because it is not convenient for their strategy. Let me tell you this. Elections will be held on December 6th, a day in which we will celebrate our democracy. And those elected will have the support of the people.
Será nuevamente una fiesta democrática y en la que los diputados o los parlamentarios que ahí salgan estarán sustentados en los votos del pueblo.
All right, Carlos Mogollon, thanks so much for joining us as we await elections, what will certainly be fascinating elections here in Venezuela. Coming up on December 6th, be sure to stay with teleSUR English and also teleSUR in Spanish as we provide you with the latest coverage of these very important elections here in Venezuela. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you again next week.